As the Steelers head into their bye week, there's lots of questions about how they can get even better from their 6-2 start and finish as a winner of the AFC North. We talk about that topic and who needs to step up the most with Jenna Harner of Channel 11, also all our Week 9 picks in the NFL. It's going to be a fun episode here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. Thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. More on them later. As I said before, we're joined by the lady herself, Jenna Harner from Channel 11. Jenna, it's always great to have you back on this show. I think one thing that everyone looks at this Steelers team, everyone's, I think Steelers fans in general, they're happy with 6-2. They're happy with the start, but they also know the whole AFC North slate is ahead of them. The Chiefs are ahead of them. The Eagles are ahead of them. The Commanders at 6-2 are ahead of them. This is not an easy second half of the schedule. It's not as difficult as I think as people thought it might be at the start of the season, but this is now a chance where the Steelers, the last two seasons, have made surges. Last year, though, they did go through a rough patch during the second half of the season. They also finished on a 3-game win streak. The run game came alive last year. The offensive line improved. The year before that, they erased they overcame a 2-6 start to finish 9-8, finishing 7-2 on the season. It seems like the second half of the season is where the Steelers have found strength in the last two seasons since Ben Roethlisberger's retired. Is this a year where you think that can happen again, even when they started so strong in the first half?
I really do, based on just what we've seen from this team up to this point. I mean, again, you can kind of break things up into, each division of this team, but the defense obviously is playing very, very, very solid football. Granted, their run defense, especially after the Giants game, has me still with some question marks. And that was something that a lot of the guys that we talked with in the locker room this week and Monday night after the game said, hey, we need to shore that up. Cam Hayward was saying, we have to figure that out. We have to fix that quickly, or teams are going to see what we put on tape and they're going to exploit it even more. So I think the defense is playing incredibly well. I think the offense, especially now that you have Russ under center and the way that we've seen him move the ball, the way we saw this offense move the ball, there's a lot to like there. Of course, you obviously want them to finish in the end zone versus just having to settle for field goals. But I think that, you look at what happened on Monday night and there were some areas where, again, the George Pickens touchdown that gets called back because of a Broderick Jones penalty, that's going to get cleaned up. You also look at the freak catch by George Pickens, which in my opinion, 2 right feet should count for both feet. So it's there. It just needs to be more consistent, which I think is also going to come with a bigger sample size from Russ. And then also to the special teams unit and the way that they're performing. When we talked with Danny Smith earlier this week, and I asked him, I was like, you guys are creating splash play after splash play after splash play. What is that like from your perspective? And he basically launched into this whole thing about how his unit has taken it upon themselves. The team has, of course, too, but his special teams unit said, we don't want to get into the playoffs with help. We don't want to have to be at the end of the season sitting here and waiting and saying, okay, we need to win and then these teams need to win. He's like, we just want to do it ourselves. We want to put ourselves in the playoffs. We want to give ourselves the best spot that they can be in. And so I think that they're going to continue to play well. I'm sure that there's going to be a game that we see them falter in just based on how the NFL is and if there's any injuries or things along those lines. But I really think that this team can take more steps forward to have more of that second half surge, quote unquote, especially when you are going to be playing a tougher schedule and you're going to be playing a divisional schedule where, as we've seen, any of those games could go any single way depending on what day it is.
I agree. It gets crazy. I mean, divisional games across the NFL are always a challenge. In the AFC North, things get physical, things get tough there, and I think that's certainly part of it. But to your point, I agree that I think there is a second half surge coming. It doesn't have to mean that they're going to finish 9-0 on the season or whatever. But I'm saying there are parts of this team that I think are warming up to being a lot even sharper than they were in the first half. You know, like you said, the passing offense and the parts of it that were just here and there were just so close. Like Broderick Jones's face mask penalty was just a poorly timed, just bad luck thing that happened. You know, Broderick Jones has struggled, but that's not even a penalty that he normally gets. That's just like okay, well, that was bad luck that happened in that situation. Van Jefferson just not sitting in the right spot. George Pickens, like you said, tapping his same foot twice and not getting the left foot down. Those are small things that I think can be corrected. And again, Jets and the Giants, when you look at their defense overall, the teams aren't good, but the defenses have provided problems to opponents and even beaten some other teams that you look at there and you're like, well, how'd that happen? So the Steelers offense finding those in just the first 2 games with Russell Wilson, and by the way, without Zach Frazier at center there, which is supposed to be a big factor in this offense, to me, I think that there is a space for a second half surge on the offense. And when you talk about the defense, the run defense, which has been good for most of the season, the fact that you see them, they're not complacent. They're not settled in like, oh, well, we've done a good job. We're 6-2. We're the number 2 overall defense when it comes to scoring. The Steelers aren't settled in that. And I think that that's a very encouraging sign from the tenor of this team that says, hey, they're not resting on their laurels. They're not coming out and saying, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, it's been a long time since we've been 6-2 coming out the break." You know, they were 8-0, back in 2020, and they saw how that's and you know, there's guys on this team that saw how that season fall apart. T.J. Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, they were here for that, and they got to see what that was like, and they're like, they don't want to go through that again. And so I think they have leaders who know how to keep guys focused. They have young guys who are inspired and are looking to play better and play their best football. And I think that is a really good combination to have for a team that's looking to make a second half surge, and in a division that, let's just say, is underperforming right now. The Ravens are 5-3. They're still a good team, but they've had some losses that are just baffling. That Browns loss last week, baffling. The Raiders loss, baffling.
Yeah.
Loss expected and are understood, but those are 2 losses that weren't supposed to happen. That now that everyone says only the Steelers lose those games, but there go the Baltimore Ravens losing those games. The Bengals 3-5. People thought they were going to be back this year. They still could be, but they're in a rough spot. The Browns, they're 2-6, and they're pretty much all out of it. This now becomes a race that I think the Steelers are a much bigger player in than most people gave them credit across the country.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, gosh, I remember all preseason seeing all these things that said, you know, the Steelers were picked to finish last in the division, which you almost have to chuckle at based on the way that the Steelers always seem to find ways to win and ways to stay at or above 500. I know so many people always are like, oh, well, you know, the likes to joke about Mike Tomlin never having a losing season and kind of just staying in that mediocre plane, which I don't think is the case at all. But that, you know, everybody was like pointing to that. Well, both can't be true. This team isn't going to end up winding up 500 and finishing last in the division. Like that wasn't going to be how this was all going to work out. I think this team is surprising a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And I think that especially on offense, you and I have talked about this kind of quite consistently after the last couple games, but this offense is moving the ball downfield in ways that I really haven't seen since I've covered this team. This is my 5th season covering this team, and this is the best I've seen them move the ball. And you and I were also just highlighting how this offense is clicking in the way that they're supposed to. This is them telling us the identity that they wanted to be all year, all off season. Coming into this year, we knew what this offense was going to look like, and now we're really starting to see it. So it's more of, hey, can they continue to build on that? Can they continue to, you know, take those deep shots down the field? Can they continue to run the ball well, work play action well, so it continues to open things up? I think we're seeing that. Now it's going to be a matter of, can Russell Wilson stay healthy? Can the offensive line stay healthy? And can the offense just find ways to make 7 points to get 7 points versus 3 points? But this is a team that to me still feels like they have not played their best football. And there's been a lot of good football that we've seen from this team right now. So I think there is a lot of optimism. I think people have a lot more hope than they did with this team, I would say, to start the season, just based on the expectations of what you didn't know about this offense. But I think that there's a lot to like here, while at the same time, again, a lot of these guys are saying, hey, look, there's still so much more we can do and still so much more left out there that we want to come into the second half of the season, into a stretch of the season that they know is going to be a tough one, and say, look, we're going to go out there and continue to get better each game.
Absolutely. I want to talk about some of the players who could go out there and get better each game and play the biggest role if the Steelers are going to win the AFC North. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Jenna Harner, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I remind you, this show is also brought to you by Game Time. It's fall, and that means there's plenty to do in Pittsburgh, and there's no better place to find tickets to all your favorite live events with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff that shows you only the incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, but maybe bad seats, bad prices. Game Time's going to always work to get you the best. And hey, if you're a Steelers fan and you missed out on some of these early home games, you get a chance to see a 6-2 football team fight for the playoffs throughout the rest of the season. Go get tickets to those events, to those games on Game Time, as well as all your concert, comedy, music theater events, anything like that in Pittsburgh. It's a live event. Game Time is going to help you get tickets for. Plus, they have a feature that's called the Super Deal that helps you find the best seat for the best price available, whether that's front row to concerts or club seats at the big game. Plus, the Game Time guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference of those prices. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, or go to their website, gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We're also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime. Please, God, no second overtimes this year. Which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like you. The fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave, we see you. You know what else gives you a bit of fuel during the week? If you're a Steelers fan at Acrisure Stadium during a Renegade. If you've ever experienced Renegade in person, you know how much energy is in that stadium and how pumped up it gets the team on the field because of how pumped up the fans feel as they wave their terrible towels. Well, that's how it feels when you take a 5 Hour Energy Fan Fuel shot, because it gives you all that energy, whether you're prepping for the big tailgate, ironing your jersey on game day, or getting your to-do list long that's just a mile long. All that can be gotten from a Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot. It's here to help keep you fuel all throughout the season. That's available with 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI. Jenna, before we get into our picks, I still want to talk about the second half season. We've talked about the surge here. If the Steelers are to win the AFC North, and I'm not saying that they will, I'm saying that if they're going to do it, let's talk about what are the most important factors or most important players who need to step up in this second half for them to get there. And I'm even going to be bold enough to do this. I'm going to say this is between them and the Ravens. I think that the Bengals could overtake the Steelers if the Steelers fall off and for second place. But I don't think the Bengals are catching the Ravens if the Ravens end up being the top team. But if the Steelers handle their business, I think the Bengals will be out of the picture. So this is more about can the Steelers and the Ravens can the Steelers outrace the Ravens up a game going into the second half of the season? The Ravens schedule this week playing the 5-3 Broncos at home. They have a rematch with the Bengals at home the week after that. Then they're in Pittsburgh on November 17th, in Los Angeles to play the Chargers, facing the Eagles at home. They get a week 14 bye. Then they play the Giants in New York. They're back at home versus the Steelers. Then they play CJ Stroud and the Texans on Christmas Day, the same day the Steelers play the Chiefs. And then they finish the season at home against the Browns. The Steelers, after this bye week, play at Washington, a 6-2 football team playing really well behind with Jaden Daniels at quarterback. The Ravens at home, the Browns on the road, the Bengals on the road, then the Browns back at home, then the Eagles on the road for a big NFC showdown. The Ravens in Baltimore on December 21st, and 4 days after that, Christmas Day, they got the Chiefs in Acrisure Stadium, and then they finish at home against the Bengals. So comparing those two schedules, looking at things here, Jenna, if you're to pick one player at the top of your head right now, who is the player that you're looking at the most that needs to step up that could be the difference maker for the Steelers to finish strong?
That is a really good question, because I think there's a lot of different directions that you could go with this. I want to say Russell Wilson. That to me, and not saying that he hasn't looked good, and not saying that he hasn't performed well in the 2 starts that we've seen him perform in. But I think that this offense needs to continue to take strides forward. I know we talked a little bit about it in the last segment, but they need to continue to just keep being consistent. And if they can move the ball the way down the field that we saw them on those first handful of drives against the Giants, where, I'm looking around the press box and saying, we haven't seen this. It was almost easy. And it's not going to be easy against teams like the Ravens and teams like the Eagles. But I think if Russell Wilson can continue to get better every game, continue to propel this offense forward. I mean, and again, we go back to Monday night, those couple touchdowns. If one of those 3 touchdowns is scored at the time it's scored, it's an entirely different game. The game is it doesn't feel as close, anything's like that. And this is the NFL. There are going to be close games. But I think if Russell Wilson can continue to move this offense along, move forward, take strides, no injuries again, I think that is going to be very crucial to the Steelers having success, because now, not that I should say, in years past, there's been so much reliance on the defense where it's okay, the offense does something, shows glimpses of things, but you were banking on the defense to really come out, make those big game-changing plays. They're still going to do that, but now they can do that with an offense that says, all right, you're forcing that turnover and we're scoring 7 off that. That's what needs to happen for the Steelers to keep pace in the AFC North, as they no doubt get into more of the bulk of their schedule here with the toughness of division games and just the caliber of some of the opponents. Chiefs, I want to say Eagles, but not entirely because they haven't convinced me yet, but Chiefs, Eagles, things like that.
I feel you on that. And I do think Russell Wilson is the biggest single player. If he puts it together, and this offense is dangerous even. If they're able to do that, it becomes a much different level. But I'm going to focus on a player and a part of the team that I think does need to get sharper. And I talked about this with Nick Farabaugh on the Thursday episode when we were breaking down some parts of the film that we studied. But it's the pass defense. And if Joey Porter Jr. and this secondary can get it together, not have as many breakdowns in coverage, be sharper on certain elements of the defense, that could be the factor that keeps teams from getting back in it. Because let's face it, Daniel Jones, look, Jenna, you're a Giants fan. You suffered through Daniel Jones' worst games. That was one of his better games that you were saying. That was something that the Steelers had to overcome, and I think was a really good sign for both Russell Wilson to get the offense going and Calvin Austin to get it done on special teams to help them get past that. But they're going to face better quarterbacks in the second half of this season than Daniel Jones. Looking at their schedule, they got Patrick Mahomes, they got Jalen Hurts, they got Lamar Jackson, they got Joe Burrow. James Jones is playing well. That's a slew of really good quarterbacks that this defense is going to have to be prepared for. And if this pass defense is not up to snuff, if they're giving up some of the big plays that they gave up against the Giants, against the Cowboys, against the Colts, that is going to come back to bite them in rough ways and let some games slip through their fingers. This could be an elite defense. This has been a very good defense to start. But if they're able to shore that part of the defense up, run defense too, they have to clean it up too. But I think they can naturally clean up the run defense. I think they can also naturally clean up the pass defense. But I think it's going to take a locking in and a significant step up in the sophomore year of Joey Porter Jr., as well as Dante Jackson as a vet. Cam Sutton does return to the team now after the bye week. That can help there. Beanie Bishop's been playing well. But can they put it together? Can they show the chemistry? Something that Nick Farabaugh theorized on this show just yesterday was he thought, hey, I think Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin are holding something back. I don't think that they're showing the full gamut of their defense right now because they want to save that for the AFC North. They don't want to put everything on tape that they're doing right now. And that's possible. But whatever they do put on tape, they have to be sharper than they were in the first half of the season, despite how sharp they were at being one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Yeah, I completely agree with you too, because there was so much talk about, when the Colts lost, the Cowboys lost, those communication breakdowns. And even when they were winning in the middle of that stretch too, there were still some big breakdowns that led to big explosive plays by opposing offenses. And talking with Dante Jackson in the locker room, he said that's been kind of a big emphasis on what they're trying to clean up, what they're trying to focus on, and what they're trying to shore up, because they know that going into this half of the season, they are playing those quarterbacks in the Lamar Jacksons, the Mahomeses, the Jalen Hurtses, et cetera, et cetera. So this has been something that has absolutely been on their radar. And this has been something that for them, I think we've seen better steps forward over the last 2 games, but I do still think that you need to, have more of those. Just make sure every guy is on the same page. Everybody understands their assignment so that there aren't those massive explosive plays. And yes, they're going to come against some of the better quarterbacks in the league, just because when you're facing a guy like Patrick Mahomes, he's going to make those plays. But I do think that this is an area too that the Steelers defense is taking steps in cleaning up, but there's still, again, more that they need.
Absolutely. We're going to get into the week 9 picks while the Steelers are on a bye. There's still plenty of NFL action. Get all of our picks for the weekend right after this here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we'll remind you the show is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. While the Steelers are on a bye week, there's plenty of action in the AFC North. Here are some of the odds, ends, and lines you can see on FanDuel.com or on the FanDuel app. Download the FanDuel app today. The Ravens are 9.5-point home favorites as they face the 5-3 Broncos. We'll talk about that matchup and how intriguing that could be for both sides. The Bengals are 7.5-point home favorites against the Raiders. And then the Browns are 1.5-point home dogs to the Chargers, who come to Cleveland. All AFC North teams are at home. Get all the odds, ends, and lines you can want on NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB. Well, not MLB anymore because the Yankees lost. But they can get all the odds, ends, and lines you want. College sports as well from FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. And right now, you can get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet today only on FanDuel. That's $150 of free bets today to new customers if you hit just a $5 bet on FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI. And as always, even when there's no Steelers game, we will give you our NFL picks heading into the weekend. It's a bye week. But checking the standings here, Jenna, you got 77 wins. I got 80 wins. I'm only 3 games ahead of you. It's still very close. So that's been very interesting to watch. But Jenna, at the top of the list, we got some people tied for first place right now. We got Dr. Doug, ESPN 5-4, and a lot of numbers after that. Sack Attack, ESPN Fan 2-7, and a lot of numbers after that. Ben picked them, and ESPN 8-5, and a lot of numbers after that. Put your name on your ticks, people. I don't know who these ESPN accounts are, unless they're bots. If they're bots, get out of here. We don't want you. But shout out to all those people that are in first place with 85 correct picks on the season. We'll see if we can catch you here as we give you our Week 9 picks in the NFL. As always, we skip Thursday Night Football with this being the Friday show. So Texans, Jets, we'll get past that. Let's kick it off with 1 p.m. Sunday, Jenna. Let's get here with Patriots at Titans. Titans 3.5-point home favorites. I really don't know who to not believe in less in this game because both teams have been atrocious. I'm gonna go with the Patriots though because I think that they've been able to find some wins early that have been very surprising. The Titans, they just seem like a huge disappointment right now. Whereas the Patriots, I knew they were going to be bad, but I feel like the Titans expected themselves to be better. They're not as much, and I think that could be that could kind of bring the morale down in this game.
And New England's playing with so much house money right now and is just absolutely loving it. The reactions coming out of the locker room after they beat the Jets last week, I think that's something that propels them a little bit more. They're feeling good. This came a week after their head coach said we have a soft team. So yeah, call them out a little bit. They got the message. Yeah, both of these teams are not great, but I think the Patriots have more together than the Titans do. So I'm going with New England.
NFC South showdown, if you can call it that. The Saints at the Panthers. The Saints are 7.5-point favorites. The Panthers just traded away Deontay Johnson. They're selling on the season. They should be. They're terrible. They're probably going to get the first overall pick. I'm going with the Saints. I don't care about the points. This is just a rough season for the Panthers. The Saints haven't been great either. They started out hot and then have lost every game since after winning 2 straight. But now I think this is their chance that they rebound. If the Saints don't rebound this game, Dennis Allen's going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. This one on paper, you're like, okay, the Saints should absolutely win this game. I know they're dealing with some injuries. I do they get Derek Carr back this week?
I think so. Yes, I did see that.
Yeah, that to me right there, your offense is going to hum back in ways that it hasn't been the last couple weeks. So, yeah, Carolina's not great too. Give me New Orleans.
Absolutely. We'll get to some of these AFC North games here. The Broncos at the Ravens. A lot of Steelers fans, I feel like, are going to try to tune into this one. The Ravens are 9.5-point home favorites, as we talked about during the break. That's a lot of points. I think the Ravens will win this game, Jenna, but give me the Broncos to cover. They've played well this season. I know Steelers fans might only watch their games, but there's a reason the Broncos are 5-3. Their defense has been pretty solid. They've been up there in the NFL in a lot of positive categories, and Bo Nix hasn't been completely terrible. He's been able to make plays here and there. I don't think it's enough to beat the Ravens, but I do think it's enough to make it inside of a 9.5-point spread. What say you, Jenna?
Yeah, I'm completely with you on this one. I think the Ravens win this game, especially after an embarrassing loss to the Browns, where they should have won that game 5 times over with any of the interceptions that they should have caught. DBs catch the ball. But I think Denver's been playing better than a lot of people have been giving them credit for, especially that defense. So I like the Ravens to win, but I do like Denver to cover.
I agree with you there. Let's move along to more of these picks here. In the AFC North, we stay because the Raiders are visiting the Bengals. The Bengals are 7.5-point favorites. Listen, the Bengals have struggled, but the Raiders, they're also selling on this season. This is a game the Bengals have to get. I think they will get. I also think that they'll cover the spread of 7.5 points. I think the Bengals, they're putting up a lot of points. The Bengals defense has struggled, but so has the Raiders defense when you look at their numbers this year, even with Max Crosby. Give me the Bengals to win. I think they'll even win by 10 to cover the spread.
Ooh, I do like the Bengals to win here. Joe Burrow saying earlier this week, we just have to win out. It's easy. Okay, sure. Right? That's good luck with that, just in general, because it's the NFL and there's parity. Who knows? Crazier things have happened. I think they win this game. The Raiders defense, too many question marks. Cincy's defense still leaves a lot to be desired, but I think this Bengals are the better team, especially the better offense.
Chargers at Browns here. This one I'm a little surprised that it's this close of a spread considering how bad the Browns have been. The Chargers, though, are 1.5-point road favorites in Cleveland. Jameis Winston, as you alluded to, you look at the final stats, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 300 yards. He was throwing the ball all over the place. But then you look and you see, oh yeah, he did throw like 5 passes that should have been intercepted that would have changed the game. They would have lost badly if at least one of them were caught, let alone 2 or 3 of them. And this Chargers defense, they're the number 1 defense in the NFL right now. They're doing the doggone thing, and I think this Chargers defense, they're going to be able to make the difference overall, and that's going to be what kind of brings things home for them. This is a team that I think that when you look at how they've played, they're going to find a way to win in Cleveland, even if it is a close contest.
Yeah, no, I think definitely the Chargers win this game. I also saw on Twitter earlier this week, some national guy had ranked quarterbacks and had Jameis Winston ahead and Trevor Lawrence ahead of CJ Stroud, Russell Wilson. I'm like, what's happening here? Who did this? I'll find it and send it to you. But I was like, what are we doing here?
Yo,
what are we doing?
Get me what that guy is smoking. That is crazy right there. So we're both taking the Chargers there. Yeah. Moving along, Cowboys at Falcons. This is an intriguing matchup because these are 2 teams in the NFC that I think have potential to be dangerous. The Falcons are 2.5-point favorites on FanDuel Sportsbook right now. The Falcons at 5-3 atop their division. The Cowboys, though, 3-4. They need this game. They need to win. They need to get something going if they're going to have any chance in the NFC East, let alone making the NFC playoffs, because the NFC is just so stacked right now with strong records and teams that are ahead of the Cowboys. But that being said, I don't think they get it done. I think they're still too banged up on defense. They haven't found their synergy on offense. Meanwhile, the Falcons, they're playing some good football. They're 4-0 in division play, 5-1 in the conference. I think that they continue to look good. And that win that the Steelers had over them week 1 continues to look better and better each week. I say that the Falcons win this one.
It really does. I keep going back and forth with this one because I feel like the Cowboys need this. The more desperate team can kind of come away with a win here. But I just think that they're missing Micah Parsons so much. They're banged up on both sides of the ball. The Falcons, like you said, have been playing really good football. I like Atlanta in this one, but I think this is going to come down to like a last second something here.
I agree. It could come down to the last second. It's not certainly done that, and then not in the favor of Steelers fans when they played the Cowboys. But let's go to the AFC East here. The Bills host the Dolphins. The Bills are 5.5-point favorites. The Dolphins getting healthier. I don't think it matters, though. Buffalo's playing really good football. I'll take them and the points.
Yeah, the Bills, no doubt, are one of the top 3 teams in the AFC right now, without a question. They're playing really solid defensively, and I think that they've always given Miami fits, and they continue to do that this week.
The Commanders at the Giants in NFC East showdown. The Commanders 3.5-point favorites in New York. Jenna, do your New York Football Giants rebound this week, or do they continue to disappoint?
Washington has been so fun. Washington, and this is coming from a Giants fan. Like, I enjoy watching the Washington Commanders play football.
Jeez, that's pain.
Yeah, but also James Daniels is spectacular to watch. So the Commanders should win this one, should win it easy.
I think so too. I'll take the Commanders in this one as well and keep the points. Bears at Cardinals. The Cardinals are 1.5-point home favorite. This I think is a really tricky one because the Bears with Caleb Williams, the offense has been great. The Bears are sneakily one of the better defenses when it comes to scoring in the NFL. The Cardinals, the Bears are here's the crazy part. The Bears are in last place in the AFC North with a 4-3 record. The Cardinals, first place in the NFC West with a 4-4 record. So that's kind of crazy to think about. It's just all relative where you're at sometimes with your records. But with that, I'm going to go with the Bears. I'm going to say that Caleb Williams' offense does just enough. I think this defense causes Kyler Murray some fits, and they find a way to go into Arizona and get a big win. What say you, Jenna?
Yeah, I'm riding with the Bears. I had said at the start of the season that I think the Bears make the playoffs. I did not anticipate the NFC North being as insanely stacked as it was, and all those teams performing as well as they've been performing. But I do like Chicago here. I like what they're stringing together. I mean, they're one DB away from paying attention to beating the Commanders, and no one talking about that Hail Mary a week ago. So instead, everyone talking about how great of a team the Bears are and how well they've come together, all those things. So I think that Chicago wins this game, but Arizona does make it interesting. They've been playing decently.
Just tell Tyreek Stevenson not to be yelling at the fans in the end zone in Arizona as the play is going on. But let's move along here. Eagles host the Jaguars. Eagles 7.5-point favorites. Big spread there. But you know what, Jenna? I don't care. Give me the Eagles and the points. I think that they take down the Jaguars. Jaguars have been a rough team. It's the Doug Peterson Bowl. Doug Peterson's back. I don't think it'll matter. I think the Eagles whoop on those guys.
Yeah, I think the Eagles are going to do to the Jags what they did to the Bengals last week. It's not going to be close.
Rams at Seahawks, NFC West showdown. What's crazy is, I think, you lock in on the AFC North and you forget how close things are. The Rams have battled back to a 3-4 record after a rough start. They're only a half game back of the leader in the NFC West in Arizona, but that's also literally every other team's record. The Cardinals are 4-4. The Niners are 4-4. The Seahawks are 4-4. The Rams are 3-4. The Rams could win this game and jump into first place of the NFC West after their terrible start, which is why they did not give up on Cooper Kupp in the trade market and took him off the trade block for the Steelers to consider. Give me the Rams. They're playing well. I like the Seahawks in general, but I think what the Rams can do at the line of scrimmage can make a difference, and that'll get them the win here.
I agree too. These two teams feel like they're kind of both going in different directions. I think the Rams are kind of surging a little bit here, and they're, coming back and saying, hey, you counted us out. Just wait. Just look, we're healthy on offense again. And all of a sudden we're scoring a bunch of points. I like the Rams here over the Seahawks.
The Lions at the Packers, maybe the game of the week this week with the NFC North being the way that it is. The Lions 3.5-point favorites in Green Bay. Look, I've been impressed by Green Bay. We've talked about their defense, what they've been able to do. I'm still taking the Lions. They were my Super Bowl favorite to begin the season. They are still my Super Bowl favorite, even without Aiden Hutchinson, because that offense is just prolific, Jenna. I'm taking Detroit. Are you with me, or are you taking the Packers?
No, I'm with you. I love the Packers' defense and what they've done defensively, but the Lions' offense, Jared Goff is on a whole other planet right now. Mm-hmm. I feel like every time I see, I'm not watching the Lions game because we're here in Pittsburgh, but I see, stats from my friends covering the Lions, and it's like, oh, hey, Jared Goff's going 12 for 12 again to start the game. He's just playing outrageous football, and I love what the Lions are doing. So I like Detroit a lot.
I hear you on that one. Next game here, FanDuel has the Vikings as 5.5-point favorites at home against the Indianapolis Colts. The Vikings started out red hot. They won 5 in a row. They've lost 2 since. The Colts, however, they're in an interesting position at 4-4 in the AFC South. They're in second place in their division, but in the AFC wildcard race, they could use some wins soon to try to pick things up. When you look at how the conference is playing, if the playoffs started today, they would be just on the outside looking in at 4-4 behind the 4-3 Chargers. Of course, records will even out by the end of the season, but they need to start stacking wins again here. And I think that desperation kicks in for them. I'm taking the Colts, who bent Anthony Richardson. They'll get Joe Flacco in. I think they'll play aggressive, and they're going to pull off an upset, my upset pick of the week. I don't care about them 5.5 points. Give me Indianapolis in Minnesota.
I'm not that confident. I think the Colts could cover, but I think the Vikings win this game. I don't think that they drop 3 in a row. And there's this crazy stat that like every team that has played the Lions this season, the game after, they've also lost, which, I mean, physical football. We talk Steelers Ravens like that all the time. And that's why they dropped their most recent game against a Rams team that is, like we said, been playing really well. So I like Minnesota in this one, but Joe Flacco changes a lot of things with what the Colts are doing.
Certainly looking at that matchup, that's part of the consideration here. Let's move right along to another game here, and it's the Buccaneers at the Chiefs. You know what? A few weeks ago, I would have looked at this game and said, oh boy, turn on the popcorn. It's going to get crazy on Monday Night Football. But the Buccaneers' injuries to me have just saddled them too much with too many concerns. The Chiefs are 8.5-point favorites. Do I feel like they're going to cover? That is a larger spread. You know what? I'm not even sure that the Buccaneers can cover. The Chiefs aren't a high-scoring team anymore. They're not a team that's going to light you up for 40 points, and then you have to get into a boat race with them. But their defense is just so good that I think they're going to limit the Buccaneers from what they want to do, and I think that this will be not a high-scoring affair, but a comfortable win for Kansas City as they keep being undefeated this season.
Yeah, you can't. I can't pick against Patrick Mahomes right now. I cannot pick against this Chiefs team that is finding ways to win. And I know people are like, oh, but they're the Chiefs, of course. Like, no, this team is depleted with injuries, and that defense is playing so well. I like the Chiefs here, but man, you almost do wish that both sides were a little bit healthier to get like the full matchup that this could have been.
Absolutely. Those are our week 9 picks in the NFL. Get all those odds, ends, and lines that we gave you here on FanDuel Sportsbook, FanDuel.com to get all those odds, ends, and lines. Jenna, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Always a pleasure to have you here. Let people know where they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Well, it's always a pleasure to join you. You can find me on Twitter at Jenna Harner 11, Instagram Jenna_Harner, and locally on Channel 11 WPXI. Lots of great things coming your way. So definitely stay tuned.
Absolutely. She's Jenna Harner. Thank you, Jenna, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. If you want to read more of my work on the Steelers at the Post-Gazette, I have a film study up on TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. They're flipping of just a few times on Monday night and what that did to free up TJ Watt to get him more shots, including the shot that he had that forced a sack strip fumble on Daniel Jones and helped the Steelers win that game. Read all that at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Watch me and listen to me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll be back Monday breaking down what we saw on Sunday and getting you ready for the Steelers to return to action against the Commanders next week here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.